You're listening to In the Chair, a podcast for Freemasons in England, the UK and around the world. Find out more at masonicpodcast.com. But first, welcome your host, Robert Bone.
Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're having a great day whenever and of course wherever you're listening to this. And as ever, this is In the Chair, a podcast about Freemasonry, and it's for Freemasons and anyone interested in Freemasonry, no matter where you are, whether you're in England, whether you're in the UK or anywhere indeed around the world. Hopefully this will be of interest to you. So many thanks for hitting the download button, and we're up to episode 15, and if you haven't already, make sure you go back and listen to the previous 14. There's been some really good podcasts in there. And actually, on to today's one. Well, today, I'm actually going to be interviewing someone about scouting. Now, how this come about is a few weeks ago, I'd asked through social media, through Twitter and Facebook, if anyone had any recommendations, any suggestions of things they'd like to be here discussed or find out more about on In the Chair. And someone did get in contact. That was Alan Beavis, and he actually done it through the Facebook group. And you can find that easily just by going to masonicpodcast.com/Facebook, and that will redirect you through to the group. Or you can go onto facebook.com/groups/Masonic podcast, and you can join there. So if you're a Facebook user, make sure you hop on there. But I asked a question about if anyone had any suggestions for future podcasts, and if you do, please continue let me know. Also through Twitter as well, it's at Masonic Podcast on Twitter. But he'd come back to say about Scouting and Freemasonry and the parallel between the two organisations. Now, I must admit, I had heard that there is a scouting a lodge which focuses on scouting. And actually, if you've been hearing in previous episodes, last episode and episode 11, I've had a few short interviews with a new Mason, Chris Butland, and he had mentioned he was involved in scouting, and I'd even suggested to him and said, I know that there's some parallels. And even though I was a scout many years ago, when I was a lot younger, I was in the Scouts, I never really acknowledged that there was much of a parallel. But then, of course, this question come up, and I thought, that would be interesting. Must remember to try to find out more. And I was actually working at an event. For those that don't know, I'm actually a professional magician. I go around to weddings and Christmas parties and all those sort of things. And there was a Toastmaster there, and I got chatting to him, and we're both Freemasons in different provinces. And then something cropped up that he mentioned. One of the ones that he was in was actually Be Prepared Lodge, which is actually the lodge about scouting. Now, I knew I could try to find the secretary and ask some questions, but when an opportunity just sort of arises, and for some reason, in a city where you don't live and neither does he, you're working at an event with someone who just so happens to be one of the founding members of a lodge that you've heard about something that someone has asked you about, you kind of think, hang on a minute, there's a few things starting to align here. So I couldn't really chat with him much at the time. Of course, we were both working in a professional context there because he's a Toastmaster. And I made sure I got his details, followed up with him a while later and explained about the podcast. He hadn't actually heard about it himself at the time. And he said, yeah, that sounds interesting. So I've got him on. And now he's called Martin Strong. As I said, he's also a Toastmaster, Master of Ceremonies. He's a chaplain in Be Prepared Lodge, which is the Scouting Lodge. He's also a member of Caversham Lodge. That's his mother lodge, which meets in the province of Oxfordshire. And we're chatting through, and so we're talking about the parallels of Freemasonry and about scouting. He's obviously used to be in the Scouts. He was a team leader in the Scouts, many years experience. And to be honest, I found it absolutely fascinating. And there were some very obvious parallels that I didn't think about until it was pointed out to me. And if you were in the Scouts, so you might have been in the Scouts again when you were a child many years ago, and it might rekindle some of your memories, and you might think about this. And if you weren't in the Scouts, you might think, well, this might not be very interesting. Bear with it, actually. It is actually really interesting, and I've learnt quite a few things, not just about scouting, but also about Freemasonry, and looking at it from the different angles. So please welcome to In the Chair, Martin Strong of Be Prepared Lodge. So please welcome to In the Chair, Martin Strong, who is going to be talking about about Scouting and Freemasonry. So welcome to In the Chair, Martin. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Many thanks for coming along. And the reason I've asked you to come on the show is because basically to talk a bit about Scouting and Freemasonry. And I have actually had listeners contact me to talk about this a little bit more. And I know that there are some, I wouldn't say links, but there are some things in common. But I'd never really paid much attention to it before. So how would you describe, obviously, what Scouting and Freemasonry has got in common?
Well, we both have the same sort of ethos in as much as that the Scouting promise says that you want to do your duty to God and the Queen to help others and to keep the Scout law. And basically, in Masonry, we do very, very similar in as much as in our first degree we acknowledge that there is a God as such. Okay, we don't actually call him God,
sure,
but because in Masonry we quite often refer to him as the great architect of the universe.
Yeah, sort of like non-denominational. As long as there's something, we're happy, no matter what you believe in. As long as there's something.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Also, the same as with Scouting, we can actually do our allegiance to the fraternity and also the Scouting Association on any volume of what we call the sacred law in Masonry.
Right.
Because all you have to do is actually prove that you have a faith.
Yes.
In both associations, and it's just that during my Scouting career, I found that most of my Scouting life it was just trying to help other people, and when I actually then joined in with Masonry,
yes, I
found that this was also a similar sort of thing where we're just trying to help other people by helping ourselves. And how can I put it? Yeah, I did term Masonry as grown-up Scouting.
Yeah, and I think when you said that to me the other day, I kind of smiled because I thought, yeah, I'd never really thought of it like that. But I mean, I was in the Scouts when I was younger. Never really sort of took it much further. But as soon as you kind of said that to me, it clicked. I thought, yeah, of course it is. There's so many sort of similarities. And I guess it's one of those things where it wouldn't surprise me if quite a lot of Masons were actually in the Scouts when they were younger as well.
Well, this is what I like about the two. We are, as I say, we're faith-based, but we're also, we actually try to help each other and help other people in the world. We're not only there, as a lot of people think, to scratch in each other's back.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, a lot of people do have this misconception about Masonry that we're only there to help each other.
Yes.
And if someone needs a leg up, then we will give it to them. That's human nature.
Yes.
That will always happen with any colleagues of any description. I have found that with Scouting, quite often, if someone's in the Scout Association, they are looked upon more favourably when it comes to getting jobs than other people, purely because they actually look at things in a different way.
Yes.
And I feel it's the same with Freemasons. We actually look at things in a slightly different way.
Right.
And so therefore, when you're actually dealing with other people, you are actually dealing with them in a more favourable way as far as I'm concerned, because I shouldn't say it's more of a Christian outlook, because
sure,
there are other religions that do join in with both. But I believe Christianity to be a way of life, and it is just helping each other along.
Sure. No, makes complete sense. And I guess one of the things as well when you're saying about that, because some people think it's obviously some big glorified business networking thing and, Freemasonry side of things. And of course, it's just one of those things when, as you said, if you know people, then you're more naturally going to, if say, for example, you needed to hire a plumber for something and there was one chap that you actually know maybe because he's a Mason or because he's a father of, he's also involved in Scouts or whatever it is, if you know someone versus someone who you just so happen to find from an advert in the local paper or in the Yellow Pages, you're more likely going to trust the person that you either have that direct or indirect relationship or something in common with, aren't you, anyway? And I guess that's a sort of, a parallel. And, so that sort of thing obviously probably does happen in Freemasonry just purely because it happens in Scouting. It would probably happen at the local ladies' knitting club as well. When you look at it like that.
Yeah, we are in a room together where we don't only do the ceremony. We do have times when we're just chatting with our neighbour. And that is the time when you actually then turn around and say, oh, of course, I know so-and-so who can do this for you. Well, and also, of course, in the festive board after the Masonry meeting, quite often you'll be chatting with lots of different people from lots of different walks of life. And each will be able to assist you as you go on.
I guess actually what summarises it quite well is how we met the other day, which was, of course, we actually met at a ladies' festival, but neither of us were actually members of that lodge involved. We're actually, basically we were private contractors. But again, I was hired as a magician because they'd hired me last year, and they didn't hire me because I was a Mason. In fact, I did actually mention it to them at some point, and when they were first booking me, and they'd actually contacted other magicians and actually realised that actually no, this chap's a Mason, so it's not some sort of leg up. It's just because he knows what the format of the evening is. Whereas if we're going to book someone else, we need to run through and say, well, this is when we do these speeches. That's what we do, and things that might not happen at a corporate Christmas party, so to speak, but a ladies' night. So for me, it's like, home from home. And I guess from you, they know, well, they're booking it because you're a professional Toastmaster. They know that, again, you know how to run a ladies' night.
Yes, I do meet with other Toastmasters, and there are one or two that actually do query me on how to actually run a ladies' festival.
Right.
For the simple reason they are not Masons. And when I give them the info that I quite often sing what's called the ladies' song, they immediately turn and say, what's that?
Right.
And if they then do actually start getting worried about running ladies' festivals.
Right.
But once they've actually found that they don't actually have to sing the ladies' song, they are quite happy to do the ladies' festival.
Right.
It's just that I find I do get more work through ladies' festivals for the simple reason I can sing the ladies' song.
Right, yeah, that's always that's something that, to be honest, if I was asked to do that, or when I've been asked to do the even just when the Warden's the Master's song, which is obviously along the same tune. Oh, that I can stand up in front of a group of people. Give me a pack of cards, and I'm fine to go in front of 200 people. But tell me I've got to sing, and that sends the shiver down my spine.
Well, I've always loved singing.
Right.
I am a churchgoer. I love to sing hymns.
Right.
So therefore, I learnt the ladies' song from my father, who was also a Mason.
Right.
And basically took over from him.
Okay.
Because he used to sing, as you say, the Master's song at our lodge. And when I first started running ladies' festivals, I was able to then convert it to the ladies' song very easily.
Yes.
Because it's only just different words.
The same tune once, yeah.
Same tune. And I find it goes down exceptionally well.
Yes.
Freemasonry has taught me a great deal. I wouldn't be a Toastmaster if it hadn't have been for Freemasonry.
Right.
But also if it hadn't have been for Scouting.
Okay, yeah, so that's the parallels.
both of them have actually helped me a great deal in getting to where I am now, because
Right.
Prior to becoming a scout leader, I actually would never have even thought of standing in front of 20 or 30 young people,
Right.
trying to advise them on games and help them along their way. But after good training at the scouting side, I was able to actually relate to the young people.
Okay.
And similarly with Freemasonry, when I first came into the lodge, I was very daunted by the idea that I may have to speak in front of, because when I joined there were 69 members.
Right.
And I was very daunted, thinking I would have to speak in front of these 69 members.
Right.
Until after the first time I did it. And I had so much assistance from other Masons that I felt very confident.
Okay.
And over the years, this is, because I've been a Mason since 1989.
Right.
And prior to that, I was in the Scouts.
Okay, so I was about to ask you, what did you join first? Were you did you go into scouting and then find yourself into Freemasonry?
I was a scout leader before I became a Mason.
Right.
And well, I would say probably it's at roughly the same sort of time.
Okay.
I had been in Scouts as a scout.
Sure. Yes.
But I'd taken on the role of a scout leader when my son was 8 years old.
Okay.
As with most parents that join the Scouting Association, they're drawn in because of their young people.
Yes, I guess that's the opposite to Freemasonry. Whereas you're sort of so, like for example, you just said you were drawn into Freemasonry because your father brings you in, but in actual fact, with Scouting, it's normally the son that brings the father in that way.
That's
I guess
correct.
that is one of the opposites.
Yes, yeah. See, because it's just that Scouting, as with Masonry, we've had our ups and downs.
Yes.
We've gone through times of great leniency when it's been very difficult to find leaders. As with Masonry, we've found it very difficult to find candidates.
Yes.
So both have actually hit times of leniency. And I believe that recently Scouting has actually been helping Masonry in recruitment.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. I know that what is happening, or when I say I know, what I've heard is that, some of the, some of the hierarchy in, at the United Grand Lodge of England are looking at the resurgency that Scouting has had over the last few years, especially, as you say, it goes through the peaks and troughs, and how Scouting had pulled itself from losing members to something that's now thriving, and looking at how the Scouting Association, turned things round and are now actually growing, and thinking, okay, if we're going to copy, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, can we look at what the Scouting Association was doing and what lessons can we learn from them to apply to ourselves, to Masonry? So I think that is, the Scouting's almost set a bit of a blueprint for Freemasons to follow. Yeah,
well, this is, because you do find that some of the hierarchy in Grand Lodge have been in the Scout Association.
Right.
And I know that they have been talking to the upper echelons of Scouting.
Right.
To see exactly how they've done it. And I'm not saying they're copying it exactly, but they are taking a leaf out of their book.
I mean, that's, to be honest, the best way to do it. And it's actually
last year, because I don't know if your listeners know anything about Masonry at all, but we have what's known as a Prestonian lecture,
right?
Which is a lecture put on not necessarily about Freemasonry, but it's of interest to Masons. And last year, the Prestonian lecture was given by a senior scout leader, a chap called Tony Harvey,
right,
who had the title, the connections between Freemasonry and Scouting.
Right.
And it gave all the similarities. It was a really interesting lecture.
Right. Okay.
It gave all the similarities between the two organisations because, unfortunately, Baden-Powell never was a Mason.
Well, actually, that's again. You're just sort of taking the question out. I was just about to ask: was Baden-Powell? Oh, I wasn't too sure on that one. I had heard that he might have been, but I don't know whether that was just the assumption. Well, obviously the things are so similar. Obviously, he must have been.
No, he wasn't.
Really?
His good friend, Rudyard Kipling was.
Okay. Yes, of course.
And it's from Rudyard Kipling's books, the Jungle Book. That Scouting was formed, basically. And so therefore it's sort of assumed that there was a connection between Baden-Powell and Rudyard Kipling in their talking to each other.
Okay, yes, certain ideas.
But it was guaranteed 100% Baden-Powell was not.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, his grandson is.
Right, okay.
Michael.
Right.
And I've met Michael.
Okay.
He's actually in Australia.
Right.
And he actually will tell you that his grandfather definitely wasn't.
Right. Yeah,
Freemason.
I've heard rumours that he might be, but again, it's just one of those things where people just thought, well, he must have been because things were just so similar. Was he a member and thought, I can try to do something similar? But of course, if you've got that indirect connection, then obviously certain parts did get passed across. And of course, there's, if he's taking, how should we say, influence from the Jungle Book, written by Rudyard Kipling, then of course there's going to be, there's some sort of similarities. You can sort of see how, the thoughts had transferred through. Well,
because in 2000, which was the centenary year, not the centenary year of Scouting, but we actually had a centenary celebration.
Right.
No, millennium celebration. Michael Baden-Powell was in this country.
Right.
And he actually came and spoke at a meeting of Masons in Chelmsford because in that year we actually had the Jamboree.
Okay, yes.
And that was just outside Chelmsford.
Right.
So therefore a lot of world Masons, including Michael, came to the meeting.
Okay.
And it was very interesting because there was about 250 there of different nationalities. And there they actually did the similarities between Scouting and Masonry. And one of the final parts of the ceremony was they actually read a section from a book, which was all about gallantry and the ethos of giving and this type of thing, what you would actually term as being the Masonry ethos.
Sure.
And they turned around and said, where do you think we got that from? And of course everybody turned around and said, well, it must have been a book on Masonry.
Right.
It turned out it was the 1934 Rover Guide, which is basically Senior Scouts.
Right.
And it was a guide, a scouting manual, and it was so close to Freemasonry, it was unimaginable.
Right. Yeah, and so, I mean, you say Freemasonry is scouting for grown-ups. It just makes so much sense. And I guess one thing where we don't have scouting camps, but then there again, people often go for ladies' festivals down in Bournemouth for the weekend. So I think the only thing is they don't sit around the campfire.
Well, no, but then, if you look at the similarities, we do sit round at a festive board.
Of course, there's still, you think about that, of course.
And what happens around a campfire, we tell yarns.
Yes.
What happens at a festive board, we chat to each other.
Yeah, and tell yarns, definitely.
And tell yarns.
Yes. That's, oh, crikey, I've come across a few of them in the time.
Okay, we don't do what the Scouts do, which is have skits, as they're called. But that's done during the actual ceremony, in a way.
Sure. No, I mean, it's so much so. And Yeah, I mean, because again, I used to be a scout, but I just never really, thought about it. And I did actually have, I think I mentioned before, someone did actually contact when I put a question out for the listeners of what would people like to find more out. And, some people did say about scouting. And of course, well, just to sort of recap, when you joined Freemasonry, that was in Caversham Lodge, which is obviously in Oxfordshire Province. But,
that's right.
And this is and when we were chatting away, because we bumped into each other at this ladies' night, we're chatting away, and it said, obviously at a ladies' night, we go, oh, you're Masons, we were chatting about that. And then it turned out that you said, and this is what made my ears definitely prick up, is that you were a founding member of Be Prepared Lodge, which is, of course, a scouting lodge. So, actually, can you give us a little bit of history behind Be Prepared Lodge and how that come about and how you become one of the founding members of it?
Well, Tony Parker, who was our founding secretary, and a few others got together and were talking about forming a scouting lodge. They made application to Berkshire to see whether they could actually form a scouting lodge in Berkshire. And the provincial Grand Master of Berkshire at that time turned around and said yes, he was quite happy. This was a chap called Hooton.
Yes.
He said yes, he was quite happy for us to form a scouting lodge, but it was not only to be Berkshire-based.
Okay.
We were to take scouts from all over the country.
Okay.
Because what he didn't want to do was just have Berkshire scouting involved. So sort of summons was put out to all the different lodges over the country.
Right.
And we had a founding meeting at Sindlesham. I think Tony was expecting sort of 10 or 15 people to turn up.
Right.
And I think there was well over 60.
Okay, yeah, so a good turnout.
Yes, and we all sort of knocked this about for a bit, and we then decided we would definitely found the lodge, and I think it was 33 of us eventually became founding members.
Right.
Because to actually found a lodge takes a good 18 months.
Right.
From the first thoughts to actually getting things on the ground.
Sure, you're going to get it consecrated, and you got everything with United Grand Lodge of England, and I'm sure there's a bit of paperwork and.
Yeah, and we were then allowed to form as a lodge. We were consecrated in Berkshire in the 3rd of September 2009.
Right.
And let me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I think there's 22 of us were founding members.
Right.
And we were actually consecrated by the consecrating worshipful brother, Right Worshipful Brother, John Michael Hooton, who was actually Provincial Grand Master at the time.
At the time, yes.
And we formed in the September, and of course our installation is every September, but every April we have our, not Founders Day, St. George's Day meeting.
Right, okay.
Because, of course, April is St. George's Day.
Yes, April the 23rd.
That's it.
Yeah.
St. George is actually our patron saint, of course.
Right, okay.
So, on the closest date we can to the 23rd of April, we actually have our renewal of promise meeting.
Right.
And all those who are allowed to wear a Scout uniform,
right,
turn up in Scout uniform.
Oh, okay. What? So actually, do the meeting in Scouting uniform?
We have the meeting in uniform.
Right. Okay.
Which is a special dispensation we have from Grand Lodge.
Right.
All of the rest of us are not able, because not everybody is able to wear a Scout uniform, even though they've been in Scouts.
Oh, right, okay.
There are certain rules about that.
Right.
But all of us that are not able to wear a Scout uniform wear what's known as the KLA neckerchief, which is the Kindred Lodges Association, neckerchief.
Okay.
And at the beginning of the ceremony, we actually renew our promise.
Oh, right, okay. What, the scouting promise?
Yep, and the worshipful master calls us to order.
Right.
He stands there with his hands on the Union flag.
Right.
We all then give the scout sign with our right hand.
Right.
And we all reaffirm our promise.
Okay.
And it's quite a moving moment because, you've got 30 or 40 men there all reaffirming their promise.
Right.
And and there's one other little quirk that we do have in Be Prepared Lodge.
Right.
We always shake hands with our left hand.
Oh, okay. Oh, actually, I remember that from scouting. You always shook hands with it. I can't remember why. There was...
It was something that Baden-Powell did start in scouting.
Right.
It was when he met up with King Din Zulu.
Right.
Of the Zulus.
Sure.
Because they had actually just defeated them. And always the Zulus held their shield in their left hand.
Right.
And so when they met Baden-Powell, King Din Zulu dropped his shield.
Right.
And extended his left hand.
Okay.
To say, I am now unprotected and I am your friend.
Right. So,
and it's always gone on from then. That's a little bit of scouting history.
That's a nice little, and it's a nice little touch. And of course, and now that's the great thing is now you're taking little bits like that and then bringing that into the Freemasonry. So in Be Prepared Lodge, you're still carrying that tradition on, which of course now, and it's now widening it out as well. And actually, what I will say as well for the listeners, Be Prepared Lodge does have a website as well. So if anyone, do you, in order to become a member of Be Prepared Lodge, do you need to have been, is there any, obviously, as well as the regular requirements for Freemasonry, is there any particular scouting side of things? Must you have been in the Scouts or been a leader in the Scouts in order to join Be Prepared?
All you need to have done is taken the Scout promise at one time during your life. Okay. So therefore, if you were actually a beaver, which is an 8-year-old child,
right,
and took your promise as an 8-year-old child,
yes,
that will stand you in good stead.
That's fine. And
you see, or if you go through to the Cubs, the Scouts, the Explorers, as they're called now,
right,
or into Fellowship, all of whom do take the promise.
Okay, so
anybody who's actually taken the promise and joined the Scout Association are eligible to become Be Prepared members.
Great, and I'll just say the website for that, for anyone who is listening and interested, is beprepared9845.org.uk. And what I'll also do is in the show notes for that, which people can find by going on to masonicpodcast.com/15, because this is episode 15. It will go through to there, and that will have the links, as well as also, I noticed that Be Prepared have also got a Facebook page and Twitter account, so anyone up on their social media can also follow and find out more about Be Prepared Lodge there. But you don't need to be a Mason already, so if you are interested in joining Freemasonry, thinking, there's a whole load of lodges, how do I know which one to choose? And you think, well, actually, I used to be a Scout, I enjoyed my scouting, they would still be welcome to join Freemasonry through Be Prepared Lodge.
Absolutely right.
Right.
And we do actually, when you go onto the website, we do occasionally have open days which we hold for Scout leaders and also Scouts and Cubs.
Oh, okay.
We've done it 3 times so far, and I believe our members are still trying to encourage it, because what we like to do is to take all the myths away about Freemasonry.
Sure, and there's been a few of those around recently, haven't there?
Yeah, and so we actually do take them into the lodge room, and we don't tell them what the ceremony is about.
Sure.
But we explain everything that we possibly can, And to tell you the truth, there are no more exploring minds than young scouts.
No, and I guess that's the thing is of course, scouting, unless you become a leader in scouting, and maybe people don't want to become a leader in scout, they enjoy being the scout, don't want to so much, lead a troop of them. I guess Freemasonry is the natural progression onwards. If, people were interested in scouting as a child, always found it fun, don't really want to go back to scouting, but enjoyed the whole, the whole camaraderie of it all, isn't there?
It is. Yeah, it's very similar camaraderie.
So,
in actual fact, in our lodge, we do have 2 ex-French scouts.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, Masonry in France had a problem.
Yes.
And they needed to find a lodge that would be acceptable. And they found that because we were a scouting lodge, we accepted them with open arms.
Right.
So,
which is, and I would get, again, having the scouting promise, that thing, which some people might have done when they were 8, 9-year-old, it's still, I guess it's still binding, I guess, on that side of things.
Yes, it is. What you find is those that have taken it basically live by that ethos in any case.
Yes.
And it's not a matter that it has to be binding on you. It's a matter that you live by that ethos.
Sure.
As far as we're concerned, it is a matter of being able to give. And in giving, as it says in the Bible, in giving you receive.
Yes. It's blesses him who gives as well as he who receives.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So, I've just found that both scouting and Masonry have fulfilled everything I wanted them to do.
Yeah, I mean, from what you're saying about about scouting, you've basically summarised the charge after the charge in the northeast and the charge to the initiates. You've basically just summarised all of those, and that's why I think I was so surprised when you said that Baden-Powell wasn't actually a Freemason, because the amount of what it's in common is is a heck of a lot in common.
He does, yes. Yeah, because after all, our promise says, on my honour, I promise to do my best, to do my duty to God, and as I said earlier, the God part is the great architect of the universe, to the Queen, and we do say in the charge, never to lose sight of the allegiance due to the sovereign of your native land.
Yes.
To help others, and as we said, during the ceremony, we ask if they have anything to give in the cause of benevolence, and that should they meet a brother in distressed circumstances, to help him.
Yes.
And then finally, to keep the Scout law. Well, during the whole of our ceremony, all we're asking is to keep the few secrets that we have, because there are only a very few secrets, just to keep those as a mystery to everybody else.
And to be honest, then those secrets are probably a lot more boring than the people that don't know them think they are. That's the irony of it.
It's very true.
Yeah, that's the thing. The secrets aren't really actually, they're not that secret.
As I say, they're not so much secrets; they're mysteries.
Yes. Yeah.
And and as we do say, are mysteries to keep.
Yeah, and I guess you could summarise it. Those secrets really are just the equivalent of the scouting salute with the what's the best way to describe it? With the 3 fingers with the thumb and little finger folded down.
That's it.
Freemasons, we've just got our own version of that, and that's pretty much it, really, isn't it?
It is.
I've blown the cover at 300 years of mystery, and I've blown it. But
not too bad though.
No, but Martin, I'll leave you on. I mean, this has been fascinating, and I'm sure many listeners who there are listeners who wanted to find out more about scouting and Freemasonry, and I'm sure you've answered questions. And for people like myself who there's Freemasonry, there's scouting, and had never actually thought about it, I'm sure many of them are going to be listening to this, and many of them probably were in the Scouts as a child, and are probably looking back, thinking about it, just like I am, so 20, 30 years ago, and thinking, yeah, of course, I remember that. Now you mention it, it's quite obvious. And I'll just to recap again, just for listeners, and of course, it'll all be in the show notes. Be Prepared Lodge is beprepared9845.org.uk. Pop onto there, and of course Martin's actually you're the chaplain of the lodge at the moment.
I'm the chaplain at the present moment. Yes.
You are the chaplain, and it meets in Wokingham, which is near Reading. And of course you don't need to be, if you're looking to join Freemasonry to start off with, you're not a member, get in contact. And of course, as long as you've sort of, as Martin said, had your scouting promise, or if you are already a Mason but used to be in the Scouts, you don't actually have to be in the same province, because as you said, the PGM at the time said, no, I'm happy to do this as long as it can be open for anyone in England who's obviously taken their scouting promise is happy
basically anyone from all over the world.
Oh, anyone. Yeah, of course. Yeah, anyone from all. Yeah, I'm just sort of thinking that I'm thinking small scale, but yes.
Well, yes, yeah. No. You see, Scouts is a universal movement throughout the whole of the world, just
like Freemasonry is as well. So yeah, another thing we've got in common. Martin, I'll tell you what, I'm going to wrap it up there because it is fascinating, and
thank you.
And I'm sure people are going to sort of want to find out more. And it might be, might be at a later date. We have you back on, and it wouldn't surprise me because this often happens. I get questions either on the comments page or people through Twitter and everything. What starts happening is people start finding out things, and it raises more questions than it answers. So it might be at a later date we get you back on maybe to talk a little bit more about scouting because there's just so many parallels. I'm sure it's really stirring up people's imaginations now.
Okay,
so
that's great.
So Martin, many thanks for your time. Thanks for taking some time out, and on behalf of myself and obviously all the listeners to In the Chair, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
My thanks once again to Martin Strong from Be Prepared Lodge. Many thanks for taking the time out, Martin, for speaking to me, and talking about that so candidly. And I hope, as I said before the interview started, if you're not a Freemason, or if you weren't in Scouts, hopefully by looking at each other from each respective angle, there's so much in parallel, and also those obviously there are differences as well, but it's quite interesting analysing those. And I hope you actually found that an enjoyable interview, something maybe a little bit different to what we've been having. We're looking at different things and maybe not going so much into the detail of Freemasonry, but just seeing how it parallels. And if you want to find out more, then the of course the Be Prepared website is Be Prepared 9845.org.uk. Of course, the links to that are in the show notes. And Martin also mentioned he is a member of Caversham Lodge that meets in Oxfordshire. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to cavershammasons.org.uk. That's cavershammasons.org.uk. That's actually the website for the Caversham Temple. There's a few lodges that meet there, but you click through there, you can find out a bit more about his lodge in particular. And I also said that, of course, Martin is also a Toastmaster in his own right. And if you want to find out more, you can go onto his own website, which is martinstrong.co.uk. So that's martinstrong.co.uk. And of course, I said I'm a magician, and I'm also available for ladies' nights and wedding parties, so it would be a bit wrong if I didn't mention myself in that lot. And I'm robertbone.co.uk. So a few little sort of plugs in there. Hopefully, as I said before, you found that interesting. All the links to all those websites I've just gone through, everything that was mentioned in the interview as well, you can find on the show notes. The show notes are easy. Just go to masonicpodcast.com/15. That's the number 15. I hope you've enjoyed that. Have a great week, and I'll speak to you again next week. I've been Robert Bone, and you've been listening to In the Chair, the Masonic podcast.
Thank you for listening to In the Chair. Visit masonicpodcast.com to see the show notes and in-the-chair.co.uk for more resources to help you get the most out of your Masonic journey. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next podcast. If you're not already, follow us on Twitter at Masonic Podcast.